This is Enterprise Security Perspectives, straight talk for the people who carry the risk. No hype, no vendor pitch, just what changes when security has to move at the speed of the threat. One quick note, the voices you're hearing, including mine, are AI generated. The ideas are Roger Halpier's.
The voice is synthetic. The perspective isn't. Let's get into it.
Last time you said governance is an operating loop, not a meeting, which raises the obvious question, who runs the loop? Today I want to talk about the person you hire to do that. Where do we start?
You start by throwing out the job description you already have. Because the role most companies are still hiring for, security program owner, framework manager, the person who builds and reports on coverage, is the wrong role now. What you're actually hiring is a decision engineer. Someone who operates the organization's continuous decision loop under time pressure. Everything else about the profile follows from that one idea.
And the profile we've been hiring for all this time, what was that exactly?
Program manager, framework owner, compliance steward. Someone who built coverage and reported on it cleanly to an audit committee. And that person was genuinely right for the last decade. When you had time, that was the job. The trap is that the title didn't change. So boards keep hiring the last decade profile for a this decade problem. The job changed underneath the title. If your job description still reads like a controls catalog, you're hiring for a war that's already over.
Decision engineer. Make that concrete for someone about to write the job ad.
Think of the lead in a hospital trauma bay. When a critical patient comes in, that person doesn't personally insert every line or run every machine. What they do is run the decisions fast, against protocols agreed long before, with the authority to act without phoning an administrator for permission. That's the modern CISO, not the most technical hands in the room. The person who operates the decision system when the clock is running and there's no time to assemble a committee.
So if I'm screening candidates, what's the first thing I'm actually looking for?
Whether they've personally run a continuous governance loop at real scale, not design one on a slide, run one. Live intelligence feeding into clear decisions. And those decisions binding the rest of the executive team to action on a real cadence. Every 2 weeks operationally, monthly with the leadership team, quarterly with the board. If their last role was annual policy refreshes and periodic audits, they're the wrong fit. That's not a model that survives an AI speed adversary, and someone who's only ever done that hasn't built the muscle you need.
What's the hardest thing to screen for? The thing most candidates get wrong?
Whether they're comfortable codifying authority before the incident. This is the single hardest cultural change the role demands. When the time between access and impact is minutes, you cannot run a phone tree to get permission to act. So the authority has to be moved forward in time. The candidate you want is one who will walk into the CEO's office, sit down with the general counsel, and agree, in writing, on the exact conditions under which security may suspend identities, isolate endpoints, revoke sessions, or degrade a service. No call in the moment. No escalation chain. Agreed in advance.
And how do I tell in an interview whether someone can really do that?
Ask them directly and watch for the hesitation. Most candidates flinch. They start talking about stakeholder buy-in, about not wanting to overstep, about process. That flinch is the answer. The one you want doesn't flinch. They've done it before. They'll tell you exactly how they got the sign-off, and they treat pre-authored authority as normal, not radical. Hire the one who doesn't hesitate.
Here's one that'll surprise my board. You're telling me the right candidate refuses to own enterprise cyber risk?
Refuses explicitly on day one. And I know how that sounds. But if a candidate sits across from you and says, I will be accountable for cyber risk across the enterprise, that's the wrong answer. It sounds reassuring, and it's dangerous. The right candidate says, business leaders own their cyber risk. My job is to equip them to own it explicitly, to put the decision in front of them in a form they'd be willing to defend in public. Security owning the risk is convenient, and it quietly removes accountability from the very people who make the business decisions that create the risk.
That's a real reframe. So who carries it?
The person who can actually act on it. If the business owns whether finance can go offline for 4 hours, the business owns that risk, not the security team that merely described it. The CISO's value isn't absorbing the risk. It's making sure the right person is holding it knowingly with their eyes open. A CISO who collects every risk onto their own shoulders looks heroic and leaves the organization worse off. because now nobody who can actually change the business is on the hook.
Let's talk about how they think about risk itself. What language tells me I've got the right person?
Listen for latency. The right candidate talks about decision latency, authority latency, and organizational misalignment, the speed of seeing, deciding, and acting. The wrong candidate talks almost entirely about control coverage and maturity scores. More controls, more maturity is reading from an older script. At AI speed, those three latencies shape your outcomes more than any additional control ever will. And a candidate who can't frame the problem that way doesn't yet understand the job.
What about technical depth? My board assumes we want the most technical security person we can find.
That's the instinct to resist. You are not hiring the deepest technical operator. A CISO who needs to be the most technical person in the room is the wrong shape for this role. The job is to operate the decision system, not to run the tooling. You hire strong sub-leaders for the deep technical work, and you let the CISO work the layer above them. If your candidate can't stop themselves from diving into the packet captures, they'll do the job they're comfortable with instead of the job you're hiring them for.
What actually goes wrong if I hire the brilliant technical one anyway?
They quietly do the job they love instead of the one you need. The deep technical CISO gravitates to the tooling, the architecture reviews, the incident down in the weeds, because that's where they're comfortable and where they get the satisfaction. And while they're down there, the decision system above them runs slow, because nobody senior is operating it. You end up with a superb engineer and an absent decision maker. It's not that technical depth is bad. It's that you've put your strongest person one level below where the role actually lies.
They still need to be credible on the technical substance, though.
Credible, yes. Fluent, where it's load-bearing. The clearest test is identity. Can they explain, without reaching for a vendor slide, why standing privilege is a defect and why identity is now the control plane the whole thing rests on? Do they have specific opinions on governing AI agents as digital actors, with their own identity, scope, telemetry, and lifecycle? Specific, not generic. That tells you they actually understand where the risk concentrates now, without needing to be the person who configures it.
And in front of my board, what does the right person look like in that room?
Fluent in business language, not technical scores. They translate security into the things a board actually decides. Which services are critical? What loss is acceptable? What trade-offs the business is choosing to make? For this CISO, quarterly board appearances aren't a stretch goal. They're part of the governance cadence. It's where the loop terminates. If your candidate can only present security as a wall of red, amber, green scores, they can't have the conversation the board needs to have.
One more on temperament. What's the personality that actually survives this job?
Senior to senior. The person who will say no to the CEO when the CEO is wrong, and who will stand in front of the board on a Monday morning and defend an emergency action the system took at 3 in the morning, calmly, without drama. No theatrics, no over-engineering, no empire building. Just calm, direct, professional judgment under pressure. Because the whole model depends on this person being trusted to hold pre-authored authority, and you don't hand that to someone who panics or to someone who enjoys the drama.
Give me 3 interview questions then, ones that actually separate the right candidate from the wrong one.
1. Tell me about a time you got written pre-authorized authority to disrupt the business before an incident. Who did you have to convince and how? If they've never done it, you'll hear it in the first sentence. 2. Who owns cyber risk in your model? The right answer puts it on the business. The wrong answer puts it on them. 3. Walk me through the governance cadence in your last role. You're listening for a continuous loop. 2 weeks, monthly, quarterly, not an annual cycle. 3 questions, and you've already separated the decision engineers from the program managers.
All right. Say I found this person. Now the fight I always have. Where do they report?
Direct line to the CEO. Dotted line to the board with standing access, not invitation only. And I'd push on that as hard as any single trait, because the best hire fails in the wrong reporting line. There are 3 reasons, and they're structural, not political.
Give me the 3, because report to the CEO is exactly the thing my CIO will resist.
First, the CISO drives decisions that bind the rest of the executive team. The loop constrains how the CIO, the CTO, and the business owners operate. The party being bound cannot be the boss of the party doing the binding. So if the CISO reports through the CIO, the model breaks on day 1. You've made the referee report to one of the players. Second, The loop terminates at the board where the conversation is risk appetite, acceptable loss, critical service prioritization. That conversation can't be filtered through a CIO or a general counsel. The CISO has to be in the room. Third, decision speed can't be outsourced, and a two-step reporting line manufactures authority latency. You cannot fix a latency problem with a structure that creates one.
People will float alternatives. Walk me through them, fast.
Report to the general counsel. Fashionable since the new disclosure rules, but legal framing slows decisions. Wrong for AI speed. Report to the COO. Defensible only if the COO genuinely owns enterprise risk operationally and the CEO is hands-off, which is rare, and usually it just dilutes the role. Report to the CIO. Structurally broken. Don't do it, no matter how tidy it looks on the org chart. Report to the Chief Risk Officer. Works only if that CRO is a true peer of the CEO with direct board access. In most companies, the CRO is 2 layers down and recreates the exact delay you're trying to remove.
So the one structure that holds?
The CISO reports to the CEO, has a mandated quarterly slot with the board, and a written escalation path that does not depend on the CEO being available. That last clause is the one people forget. If the CEO is on a plane during an AI speed incident, the pre-authored authority still has to function. A structure that assumes the CEO is always reachable isn't a structure. It's a single point of failure with a title.
And if I genuinely can't win the reporting line fight, politics being politics,
Then you fight for the authority instead. And here's the honest nuance. The position on the org chart matters less than the authority preloaded into the role. A CISO who reports straight to the CEO but has no pre-authored authority is theater, an impressive line on the chart, powerless in the moment. A CISO who reports to the CIO but holds a board-ratified, pre-authored playbook can still function. So if you can only win one battle this year, win the authority. But understand, that's a compromise, not the destination.
and if this person doesn't exist on the market, they're rare, by your description.
They are rare, and you may have to grow one. The good news is the rarest parts aren't technical. They're judgment and temperament, and you can develop those in a strong leader you already have. Take someone with the business fluency and the spine, and deliberately give them the reps. Put them in the room where authority gets pre-agreed. Let them run the loop. Let them defend a hard call to the board. What you can't shortcut is the comfort with pre-authored authority and the willingness to refuse to own the risk. Hire for those or develop for those, but don't compromise on them.
So what's the real test when the board asks if we've got this right?
Whether you solve both, the reporting line and the authority, instead of trading one for the other. That's the real test of whether the organization has actually accepted what AI speed demands. Most haven't. They hire a strong person, bury them under the CIO, give them no pre-authored authority, and then wonder why the response was slow. You're not hiring a security manager. You're hiring the operator of your decision system, and then you're giving them the seat and the authority that let the system actually run.
A clear place to land. Thank you.
That's Enterprise Security Perspectives. If it made you think, there's more material linked in the show notes, and the next episode's already waiting.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next one.